Imagine sitting down at the table and believing you are in front of one of the healthiest foods in the world, the tomato. Red, vibrant, a staple in salads, sauces, and dishes that have been passed down through generations. How many times have you heard that it's a synonym for health, full of vitamins, and an ally for longevity? The truth, however, can be much more complex and even dangerous, especially for those who have passed the age of 60. The tomato is rich in lycopene, an antioxidant associated with protection against cardiovascular disease and some types of cancer. But what almost no one talks about is that, depending on how it's consumed, stored, or combined, it can become a silent trigger for digestive, inflammatory, and even heart problems. It's that old story: the poison is in the dose and, especially, in the details. Many seniors live with reflux, gastritis, joint pain, or high blood pressure without imagining that simple habits related to tomatoes could be aggravating these symptoms. The food itself isn't the villain, but rather the mistakes made throughout life, repeated day after day, that undermine vitality without giving clear signs until it's too late. Scientific research has already pointed out that excessive consumption of acidic foods, like raw tomatoes in large quantities, can irritate the stomach lining, worsen nighttime reflux, and even wear down tooth enamel. And if that seems minor, think about processed sauces, rich in sugar, preservatives, and sodium. They are true traps hidden in pretty jars. How many seniors believe they are making a healthy choice by swapping fried foods for a simple pasta with ready-made tomato sauce? The problem is that these small details add up. And the body after 60 no longer has the same capacity for rapid repair. Every night of poor sleep due to reflux, every blood pressure spike aggravated by hidden sodium, every inflammation that lingers in the joints, all of this gradually steals the energy that should be used to live well, with autonomy and joy. That's why we need to talk about the 9 fatal mistakes with tomatoes that almost no one discusses, but that every senior needs to know. Because information isn't just knowledge, it's prevention, it's the power to choose. And when you understand how to avoid these mistakes, the tomato stops being a risk and goes back to being what it should be, an ally for health and longevity. Now, get ready. Some of these mistakes may seem harmless, even trivial, but they hide profound impacts on the body. You might even be surprised to realize you've already made one or more of them without noticing. And if this warning has already surprised you, hit that like button now. That way, more people will have access to information that can change the course of their health after 60. When we talk about tomatoes, the first image that comes to mind is a colorful and refreshing salad. How many times have you thought, if I'm eating a salad, then I'm taking care of myself? This is one of the biggest myths of eating after the age of 60. The raw tomato, despite seeming harmless, can become a silent challenge for the mature body. The reason lies in its natural acidity. The tomato has a low pH, and when consumed in large quantities or daily, it can irritate the stomach lining. For those who already deal with gastritis or reflux, this can mean sleepless nights, a burning sensation in the chest, and even pain when swallowing. What many seniors describe as common heartburn may actually be a sign that the body is calling for help. And it doesn't stop there. The acidity of raw tomatoes can also accelerate the erosion of dental enamel, especially in more sensitive mouths where saliva is no longer produced with the same efficiency as in youth. A study published in Gerodontology journal showed that enamel loss is directly linked to increased sensitivity and the risk of cavities in seniors. In other words, the salad that seemed like a perfect choice could be eroding your natural protection against pain and oral infections. Another little discussed detail: for many people, frequent consumption of raw tomatoes can trigger joint discomfort. This happens because the tomato belongs to the nightshade family, which contains a substance called solanine. In some predisposed individuals, it can worsen inflammatory processes like arthritis. This doesn't mean everyone will experience this effect, but if you already live with joint pain, it's worth observing how your body reacts after eating salads rich in tomatoes. Of course, this doesn't mean you should banish raw tomatoes altogether. But the secret lies in moderation and balance. An occasional slice in a meal is unlikely to cause problems. The risk arises when the habit is repeated day after day, as if it were an unquestionable rule of health. How many of us haven't fallen into the trap of the more natural, the better? The body over 60 demands more attention, more listening. And the truth is that sometimes, the choice that seemed healthy may be fueling the very complaints that rob us of our energy: reflux, joint pain, fragile teeth, and broken nights of sleep. And what seems like just simple heartburn can be a sign of something much more worrying. Because when the body starts giving constant warnings, it's not just a passing discomfort, it could be the prelude to bigger problems that, if ignored, will exact a high price on your vitality. If raw tomatoes in excess can be treacherous, the danger becomes even greater when we talk about ready-made sauces. They are on every supermarket shelf, colorful, attractive, and sold as practical and tasty options. Who has never opened a jar of processed sauce to prepare a quick pasta, believing they were choosing something healthy? After all, it's tomato sauce, right? The problem is that the last thing you'll find inside these jars is real tomato. Research reveals that most ready-made sauces contain alarming amounts of sodium, sugar, colorings, and preservatives. A single serving can exceed half the daily salt recommendation for a senior. And this has direct consequences: increased blood pressure, kidney overload, fluid retention, and a higher risk of stroke. The hidden sugar is another silent enemy. It often appears disguised on labels as corn syrup or maltodextrin. What seems like an innocent spoonful of sauce can contribute to glucose spikes, something extremely dangerous for those who already live with insulin resistance or type 2 diabetes. In the long run, this habit promotes the gain of abdominal fat and chronic inflammation, which is at the root of diseases like Alzheimer's, heart problems, and even certain types of cancer. And there's another aggravating factor: the chemical preservatives and additives. A younger body can metabolize these compounds more efficiently, but with aging, the ability to neutralize toxins decreases. This means that each dose of ready-made sauce can represent an extra burden for the liver and kidneys, organs already taxed by the passage of time. Now, imagine the scene: a senior who swaps fried foods for healthy pasta with ready-made sauce, believing they are doing their heart a favor. Without realizing it, they are ingesting enough salt and sugar to accelerate the very problems they fear most. It's like trading a declared enemy for an invisible one. And the most dangerous part is that these effects don't appear immediately. They accumulate in silence. A slowly rising blood pressure. And unexplained fatigue. A test that reveals abnormal glucose levels. The body gives warnings, but subtly, until the alert comes in the form of a diagnosis. Do you see how the illusion of convenience can be too costly? And here's the most important detail: the industry knows that the addictive taste of excess salt and sugar makes people want to consume more and more. It's not a coincidence. It's a strategy. But what's truly surprising is that the next mistake has nothing to do with the industry. It happens inside our own homes, in our own kitchens. And it could be turning a food that should protect your body into fuel for premature aging. If ready-made sauces hide industrial dangers, now we come to a mistake that originates in our own kitchens: the excessive use of frying with tomatoes. Who has never prepared a sauté with plenty of oil to enhance the flavor? It's a tradition in many homes around the world. But what seems like a harmless custom may actually be accelerating the process of cellular aging without you realizing it. When tomatoes are exposed to high temperatures during frying, oxidative compounds are released. In simple terms, excessive heat in common oils, especially soybean, corn, or sunflower oils, creates free radicals. These unstable molecules attack our cells, damaging proteins, fats, and even DNA. This process is called oxidative stress, and it's directly linked to premature aging, memory loss, a weakened immune system, and an increased risk of chronic diseases. Have you ever noticed that after a heavy meal, you get that feeling of an inflamed, bloated body, sometimes even deep drowsiness? This isn't just difficult digestion. It's the body's reflection of trying to deal with the overload of heated fat and toxins. For people over 60, this impact is even greater, as the body can no longer neutralize free radicals with the same efficiency as before. Furthermore, frequent frying with tomatoes reduces the absorption of some important nutrients. Although lycopene, the most famous antioxidant in tomatoes, becomes more bioavailable with moderate heating, excessive heat destroys vitamin C, which is essential for the body's defenses. In other words, instead of gaining benefits, you might be canceling out the very best that tomatoes have to offer. Another critical point: many seniors, to add more flavor, reuse the same oil multiple times. This enhances the formation of toxic substances, such as aldehydes, which are associated with cardiovascular and neurodegenerative diseases. The quick sauté that was supposed to be practical turns into a true fuel for silent inflammation. And here's the trap. This type of mistake goes unnoticed because it's been part of our food culture for decades. We do as our parents did, without questioning. But the body changes, and what seemed tolerable in youth can become a poison after 60. So the big question arises, if even the way we cook can have such an impact, does the time of day we eat tomatoes also affect our health and energy? The answer might surprise you, because it's not just about what you eat, but when you eat it. Many people believe that dinner should be light, so they turn to a tomato salad before bed. It seems logical, something fresh, low in calories, and easy to prepare. But this choice, so common in the routines of seniors, could be sabotaging the quality of their sleep and the body's nighttime recovery. Tomatoes, being naturally acidic, stimulate the production of gastric juices. When consumed at night, especially shortly before lying down, they significantly increase the risk of reflux. This happens because, in a horizontal position, the stomach acid has an easier time flowing back into the esophagus. The result is that burning sensation, a nighttime cough, a persistent throat clearing, and in more severe cases, microaspiration that irritates the respiratory tract. A study from the American Journal of Gastroenterology has already shown that people who suffer from nighttime reflux have greater difficulty reaching deep sleep. And deep sleep is precisely the phase in which the body regenerates, strengthens memory, and repairs tissues. For those who have passed 60, losing these hours of quality sleep means waking up tired, with a slower mind and a weakened immune system. Besides reflux, there's another important detail: poor nighttime digestion. Tomatoes contain insoluble fibers and seeds that can be harder to process for an aging digestive system. This leads to abdominal discomfort, gas, and a feeling of bloating. The senior wakes up as if they haven't rested, believing the fault lies with their age, when in fact it could just be an inappropriate dietary habit. And the impact goes beyond a bad night's sleep. Studies indicate that fragmented nights elevate levels of cortisol, the stress hormone. Excess cortisol is associated with muscle mass loss, accumulation of abdominal fat, and a higher risk of type 2 diabetes. In other words, that innocent tomato in your evening salad could be slowly undermining your vitality. So, what should you do? The secret is in the timing. Consuming tomatoes during the day, especially at lunch, allows the body time to digest without disrupting sleep. At night, prefer vegetables that are easier to digest, like cooked zucchini or carrots. This way, you protect your sleep, reduce the risk of reflux, and ensure that your morning energy is renewed. But don't think the mistakes with tomatoes end at mealtime. There is an even more treacherous detail: the way we store this food in our homes. A simple storage habit can turn a fresh tomato into a source of nutrient loss and even a risk of contamination. Few people imagine that even the way you store a tomato can determine whether it will be an ally or an enemy to your health. It seems like a small detail, but it's in these details that the difference between vitality and premature wear and tear is hidden. Many seniors, out of habit, put tomatoes directly in the refrigerator, believing they are preserving their shelf life. But is this really safe? Science shows that it's not. The cold of the refrigerator interrupts the tomato's natural ripening process and alters its cellular structure. This means it loses flavor, texture, and, most importantly, part of its nutritional value. Lycopene, for example, the most important antioxidant in tomatoes, associated with preventing cardiovascular disease and combating prostate cancer, is produced in greater quantities when the tomato ripens outside the refrigerator. By putting it in the cold too early, you are reducing the very thing that makes it special. Another problem occurs when the tomato is already cut. Many people leave halves in the refrigerator without proper protection, exposed to the air. This promotes oxidation, vitamin loss, and even contamination by bacteria. In more vulnerable bodies, like those of people over 60, this carelessness can result in foodborne infections, diarrhea, and a drop in immunity. The ideal way is to store whole tomatoes at room temperature, in a cool, airy place, away from direct light. Only when they are overly ripe and you can't consume them immediately should you put them in the refrigerator, but always well packaged. If they are already cut, they should be protected in an airtight container or with plastic wrap, and consumed quickly, within 24 hours at most. Another detail that few people notice: don't store tomatoes next to fruits like bananas or apples. These fruits release ethylene, a gas that accelerates ripening and can make the tomato spoil faster. The result is waste, altered flavor, and in some cases, the risk of ingesting fungi invisible to the naked eye. It's curious to think how such a simple, seemingly harmless gesture can have such a big influence on the quality of what ends up on our plate. And when health is at stake, it's not just a matter of taste, but of preserving vital energy. Now, if storing it incorrectly already has consequences, imagine when the problem lies in the combination of tomatoes with other foods. There are mixtures that seem delicious, are part of our daily lives, but may be overloading the body without us even realizing it. And often, they appear in the most beloved dishes of our cuisine. The tomato, on its own, can bring benefits or risks depending on how it's consumed. But the real danger arises when it's combined with certain foods that have been on our tables for decades. Often, the problem isn't the tomato itself, but the seemingly harmless mixture that ends up creating a silent time bomb for the body. Think, for example, of the classic duo, tomato and high-fat cheese. Present in pizzas, lasagnas, and sandwiches, this combination is irresistible but extremely challenging for the digestion of someone who is past 60. The tomato, being acidic, stimulates the production of gastric juice. The cheese, rich in saturated fats, slows down stomach emptying. The result? Slow digestion, heartburn, reflux, and a digestive overload that steals energy and can affect sleep. Another dangerous combination is tomatoes with processed meats, like sausages, hot dogs, or ham. These foods contain nitrates and nitrites, which in contact with the acids in tomatoes can form compounds called nitrosamines. Science has already proven the link between these substances and an increased risk of cancer, especially in the digestive system. In other words, that innocent hot dog might be much less harmless than it seems. And we can't forget the excess salt that accompanies many of these preparations. Tomatoes with cured meats and salty cheeses create a dish loaded with sodium, raising blood pressure and increasing the risk of heart failure and stroke in seniors. The heart, already taxed by time, suffers in silence until the symptoms become visible. Does this mean we should banish pizza, lasagna, or pasta forever? Not necessarily. The secret is in the frequency and balance. An occasional slice is unlikely to do harm. The problem arises when these dishes become a routine part of the diet, accumulating inflammation and overload day after day. The most important thing is to observe how your body reacts. Joint pain after a heavy meal? Swelling in your hands or ankles after a pizza? Constant heartburn? These are signs that something isn't working right. The body speaks, and learning to listen to it is one of the greatest forms of wisdom after 60. These dangerous combinations show that kitchen traditions are not always synonymous with health. Sometimes, the dish that brings back fond memories might be costing you years of vitality. Now I want to hear from you. Which of these combinations with tomatoes do you consume the most? Pizza, pasta, hot dogs? Comment down below, because your experience might open the eyes of other people who are going through the same thing without realizing it. And if these mixtures are already concerning, wait until you discover what happens with one of the world's most popular condiments, present on almost every table and in every refrigerator, that seems harmless, but could be one of the biggest tomato traps. Ketchup is omnipresent, kids love it, adults use it on sandwiches and fast food, and many believe it's just a harmless flavor enhancer. But for those who have passed the age of 60, it can represent a silent and constant danger, especially when combined with the tomato present in its formula. Despite seeming natural, most processed ketchups contain shocking amounts of sugar, salt, and preservatives. A single packet can have more sugar than a whole piece of fruit, and when consumed daily, even in small portions, it contributes to insulin resistance, increased blood glucose, and chronic inflammation. These effects are directly linked to the risk of type 2 diabetes, heart disease, and even memory loss in seniors. The excess sodium also deserves attention. Each dose of ketchup increases fluid retention and raises blood pressure. For people who already have hypertension, frequent ketchup intake is like adding fuel to a silent fire. The effects don't appear immediately, but the body suffers little by little. Furthermore, the chemical additives and preservatives in this condiment can overload the liver and kidneys, organs that, with age, no longer process toxins with the same efficiency. And even those who seek light or zero-sugar versions need to be careful. These alternatives often contain artificial sweeteners that can alter the gut microbiota, affecting digestion, immunity, and even mood. And here's the most curious detail: many consumers don't realize that by adding ketchup to dishes that already contain tomatoes, like burgers, pizzas, and sandwiches, they are doubling the risks. It's an invisible trap, a cumulative effect that builds up day after day, meal after meal. Therefore, the message is not to eliminate ketchup from your life, but to consume it consciously. Watch the quantity, frequency, and context. Homemade preparations, with natural tomatoes, little salt, and olive oil, can bring flavor without overloading the body. But the warning doesn't end here. Even with conscious choices, there is an even more critical mistake: the way we cook tomatoes daily. Some preparation methods that seem nutritious can end up destroying essential vitamins or intensifying inflammatory compounds. And that's exactly what the next section will reveal. Cooking tomatoes seems simple: a sauté, a homemade sauce, a soup. But the way you heat this food can make all the difference between a dish that strengthens and one that harms the body. Many seniors believe that the more cooked, the healthier, or that quick frying enhances nutrients. The reality is more delicate. The tomato is rich in lycopene, a powerful antioxidant that protects the heart and prevents some types of cancer. Interestingly, studies show that lycopene becomes more bioavailable when the tomato is lightly heated, as in a sauce cooked for a short time. The problem arises when the food is exposed to excessive heat or long frying times. In this process, the heat destroys vitamin C and can generate oxidative compounds that increase inflammation in the body, especially in people over 60, whose natural antioxidant system is already diminished. Another critical point: cooking excessively with bad oils, like soybean or corn oil, increases free radicals, accelerating cellular aging and weakening immunity. Digestion also becomes slower, causing abdominal discomfort, a feeling of bloating, and even impacting sleep. It's important to find a balance, heating tomatoes to release lycopene, but without overdoing it to the point of destroying essential vitamins. Simple preparations with olive oil and controlled temperature increase the absorption of antioxidants without generating toxins. Furthermore, combining tomatoes with foods rich in omega-3, like fish or seeds, enhances the anti-inflammatory effect, turning the dish into a true ally for longevity. And even with all these precautions, many people ignore subtle signs that the body sends after consuming tomatoes improperly. Heartburn, abdominal discomfort, mild joint pain, or unexplained fatigue are warnings that should not be underestimated. Ignoring them is like stepping on unstable ground without realizing it. The most concerning point? The last mistake, which might seem like a detail, is directly linked to silent inflammations that erode vitality and energy, profoundly impacting the quality of life for those who have passed 60. This is the final alert before revealing the practical solutions to turn tomatoes into a health ally. Often, the biggest mistake isn't in what we eat, but in how we interpret our body's signals. After a meal with tomatoes, do you feel mild heartburn, abdominal discomfort, or even minor joint pain? These symptoms might seem temporary, but when they are repeated, they indicate that something isn't working as it should. Ignoring these signs is common, especially among seniors, who often attribute every discomfort to old age, not to what they ate. The tomato, because it contains solanine, a natural compound from the nightshade family, can intensify inflammation in sensitive people. The daily repetition of small inflammatory reactions can add up, causing silent discomforts that impair mobility, energy, and vitality. Furthermore, frequent reflux or heartburn can compromise sleep, which is essential for cellular repair, memory, and hormonal balance. Another warning is the impact on digestion. Gas, a feeling of bloating, slight swelling, or intestinal discomfort can indicate that the body is having difficulty processing the tomato. In the long run, these ignored signs contribute to metabolic changes, including glucose spikes and unstable blood pressure. The lesson here is clear: the body speaks all the time. It's necessary to listen and adjust dietary habits, especially after the age of 60. The perception of each symptom, no matter how small it may seem, is a powerful tool for prevention and longevity. But don't worry, knowing how to identify the signs is only half the battle. There is a path to transform the tomato from a potential villain into a health ally. With the right preparation choices, smart combinations, and attention to quantity, it's possible to enjoy all the benefits of this food without risks. And the best part, these changes don't require radical diets or impossible sacrifices. Small adjustments in your daily life can generate surprising results in energy, digestion, and vitality, giving your body back what it needs most: balance and strength to live well. Now that you know the 9 mistakes that can turn the tomato into a silent enemy, it's time to turn the tables. The secret lies in small, smart choices that allow you to enjoy all the benefits of this food without compromising your health. First, pay attention to the preparation. Lightly cooking tomatoes with olive oil releases lycopene, the antioxidant that protects the heart, arteries, and even some organs vulnerable with aging. Avoid intense frying or long periods of heat that destroy vitamin C and generate inflammatory compounds. Homemade sauces, simple and seasoned with fresh herbs, are much healthier than processed ones. Second, choose ripe, firm tomatoes with intense color. They have a higher concentration of nutrients and less aggressive acidity. Removing seeds and tougher parts helps with digestion, especially for sensitive stomachs. Small adjustments like these reduce reflux, gas, and abdominal discomfort. Third, pay attention to combinations. Prefer to pair tomatoes with foods rich in omega-3, like fish, seeds, or nuts, enhancing the anti-inflammatory effect. Avoid an excess of high-fat cheeses and processed meats that increase inflammation and digestive overload. By combining intelligence and flavor, it's possible to maintain nutritious and pleasurable dishes. Fourth, observe your body's signals. If you notice heartburn, bloating, or discomfort, adjust the quantity, time, and preparation method. Listening to your body is essential for maintaining energy, restorative sleep, and mobility. Small changes lead to consistent results. Finally, remember, information is power. By applying these adjustments, you not only protect your body but also turn the tomato into a true ally for longevity. It stops being a silent risk and starts contributing to cardiovascular, digestive, and even brain health. If these tips were valuable to you, share this video with someone who also needs to learn how to consume tomatoes intelligently. By doing so, you help spread habits that protect and prolong life. But before we finish, there is one final step: consolidating all these lessons into a practical daily routine, ensuring that every meal brings energy, vitality, and pleasure without unnecessary risks. And that's what the final section will show. We have reached the end of this journey through the world of tomatoes and the mistakes that can affect health after the age of 60. What's clear is that the danger is not in the food itself, but in the way it is consumed, prepared, stored, and combined. Every detail makes a difference: the time of the meal, the type of cooking, the accompaniments, and even paying attention to the signals your body sends. The good news is that with small changes, it's possible to turn the tomato into a true ally for vitality. Simple preparations, conscious choices, and attention to your body's signals ensure real benefits: cardiovascular protection, strengthened immunity, reduced inflammation, and even improvement in sleep and daily energy. It's a perfect example of how information and practice go hand in hand to extend quality of life. Remember, aging healthily doesn't mean giving up the pleasure of eating. It means making smart choices, respecting your body's limits, and using foods as allies, not silent enemies. Every meal is an opportunity to nourish energy, strength, and vitality. And it's not just about you. By applying these strategies, you influence your entire family, friends, and community. Small daily adjustments can have big impacts, preventing diseases and keeping the body and mind active for longer. Knowledge is, without a doubt, the most powerful tool for aging with quality. If you have applied these guidelines, share this video with someone you love. This simple gesture can help another person avoid silent mistakes that compromise health and vitality. And to continue receiving practical tips on longevity, prevention, and healthy eating specially designed for those over 60, subscribe to the channel now. This way, you guarantee access to all the upcoming alerts that can make a real difference in your life. After all, taking care of your health is a continuous journey, and the power to age with energy and autonomy lies in the choices you make every day, in the details that many ignore, but that can completely transform your quality of life.